the focus is on Michigan. Our focus here is obviously on Michigan, but when the nation looks at this game, it's mostly about Michigan because they're the high-ranked team, they're the Big Ten champion, all of that. But Maryland has to be going into this game thinking, Maryland, for the time Mike Loxley has been there, looks down on Rutgers and maybe a team or two from the Big Ten West, maybe this year Indiana. That's where they collect their 2 or 3 wins in conference, and they've never gone into the upper division of the Big Ten East. But they believe that this is the year. They tasted a winning season for the first time in 12 years last year. They won a bowl game. They did some things that they haven't done in 10 or 12 years last year. And I think that they're probably just focused on, hey, this is a measuring stick for us. So they're going to be amped up. And then just one other note, how do they prepare defensively? Is their game plan going to be to try to extend the game, try to make Michigan drive a long field, umbrella coverage, keep everything in front of us, then turn it over to our offense, hope that they make a mistake when they're on offense? Or, hey, this is a first-time starting quarterback against a Big Ten defense. We're going to go after him, shake him up a little bit.
Marcus, it's interesting. Real quick, sorry, Des. It's interesting that you brought up Maryland's mindset. Coming into this game, I was reading a quote that Loxley said about the upcoming game. He basically said, "Look, we understand this is a great test for us. We understand what we're up against. Our goal is to stay close. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but to stay close within the game." Get to the full quarter and basically see what happens. He said verbatim, we have nothing to lose. So that kind of gives you an insight into how Maryland looks at this game. They know that Michigan, on paper, is the superior team, and they're coming here essentially with nothing to lose and playing free. So that can be very dangerous for the Wolverines because if Maryland comes out and they get to a hot start, or at least a good start, those guys start getting confidence from the sideline. You never know what kind of dogfight you may find yourself into.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's interesting too, but here I am sitting as a Michigan guy, and I think we're going to go into mid-October, and everyone's still going to be talking about how Michigan's untested. You go to Maryland. I mean, knock on wood, right, that they're not going to slip up in one of these games, and you could go to Kinnick for sure. We've all experienced that as Michigan people, right? Nobody wants to go into Kinnick. Thank God it's a noon game. If it was a night, I'd be crapping my pants right now.
Justin, don't let Des hear that. Des doesn't like to hear that. He makes fun of me all the time. But go ahead.
Hey, listen, I've been scarred too many times. All right,
me too, man.
Kinnick at night is a different building. But I mean, when you're looking at the schedule and you got Maryland, then at Iowa, then at Indiana. And it's like, until that Penn State game in mid-October, I feel like everyone's going to be having the same conversation. Like, basically cupcake non-conference into the start of a cupcake a little bit. It's not cupcake, but similar big start to the Big Ten schedule. And so, but, what I love is that stress test in this week against Maryland is for the defense. And then the stress test the next week against Iowa is for the offense. And so it's a pretty good setup, actually, for the beginning of this season until Penn State. And now, I have no idea how good Auburn is because there's been a lot of crap going on at Auburn. But Penn State looked pretty damn good, I'll say that. And so that all of a sudden that game looks to be, the first one that Michigan has circled. But I think, focusing on this one this week, it definitely, there's going to be a lot of people figuring things out. And one piece of that is you're finally going to have your starters play a full game. That hasn't happened even close to that this year. I was talking to Blake the other day, and it's like he would get like, a few plays here and there in the first quarter and obviously scored 5 touchdowns, but half of them were on 1-yard runs. And so I think that's one thing is how do you stand up for 4 quarters and last and do all that stuff because you haven't even had to think about that yet.
Yeah, it definitely changes things to have to play, to go from kind of we know we're probably going to play a half, maybe, 2.5 quarters max, and then kind of wrap it up to guys playing for a full 4 quarters. And I wonder if that, any potential, you think about it, but playing a full game, I haven't looked at the weather, but I know today in Michigan, it's pretty warm. Do you worry about things like cramps and, those types of things kind of come into play when you're straining yourself for a longer amount of time. So I don't think it'll be a huge deal, but definitely something to think about.